Take it away.
Okay. All right. Well, Lee is going to have a very brief introduction because this is a man who needs no introduction. We already met him 2 weeks ago. And Jonathan, I think that you have a very tough act to follow, which is your own first presentation, as well as Aaron's presentation last night. They were both home runs. And so we're going for 3 out of 3. You can take it away.
Okay, thank you. Well, we have a problem because if it was a home run, I must admit, I really don't understand baseball. So I assume a home run is something good, right?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
here in
that's a very good
Argentina,
thing.
we of course love soccer, we love basketball, but about baseball, something we really don't understand. So, but I get the idea. Thank you.
Okay, how about it was a slam dunk?
Okay, yeah.
No, I'll tell you what it is.
No, actually, a couple of days ago, Argentina's national team beat the US team in this basketball tournament, some Pan American or something like that. So here was
Cantor, it was a curling 25-yard free kick into the goal.
Yes, now we are. Okay, well, thank you. Hopefully, I will start to meet some of you next week in person. So I'm very excited about that. Well, just like Lee just said, we had a previous session a couple of weeks ago about some classical and contemporary sources about what is a good cantor. And the idea today is not really rely on this kind of halachic material, so to say, but try to focus on what's the relationship between text and music. In Judaism in general, especially in high holidays, in Yamim Anoraim, we will go through 2 basic parts of this session. The first, we will explore a very interesting concept in our tradition, is the concept of Sinai tunes, melodies that comes from Sinai. It's a bit tricky, the idea, but we will explore what's that about. And that's one of the keys to understand the whole relationship between text and music in Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And the second part, we will read some quotes from a text that I really love. It's one of my preferred, most favorite text about cantorial music from one of my favorite Jewish thinkers, that is Abraham Yeshua Heschel. We will read some quotes from a very short paper he wrote called The Vocation of the Cantor. That in that paper, he tries to analyze what's the very deep and sometimes complex relationship between music and prayer, music and text in Judaism. So that's the basic idea. Birshut Rabbeinu Umoreinu, with the permission of our rabbi here, Rabbi Aaron, which I already consider my rabbi and my teacher. We will start this session. I will share, just like the other time, a document. I don't know who is the. I think Carrie needs to allow
Carrie, can you allow screen sharing or make Jonathan the host?
Go ahead.
Yes, perfect. Here we are. Okay. Well, I just named this short session Prayer in Song, How Music Enhances Our High Holiday Experience. And just like I mentioned, we will start with a concept that is called Misinai tunes, Nigunim Misinai, which is a very key concept to understand the whole idea of the music in high holidays. I will, if I ask to you, how old is the music, the songs, the tunes we sing in high holidays, we sing in Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur? In general, when I ask this question, most congregants or most people consider our melodies much older than they are. I always give the same example. When I ask for example, to my Cantor students, how old do you think is the Shalom Aleichem? We sing every Friday night, Shalom Aleichem, and they just say, I don't know, 200 years, 300 years, and actually, it's an American melody by Abraham Goldfarb that was one of the main composers in the first part of the 20th century. It's really, really new, and some of the melodies we consider traditional, they are sometimes Hasidic, but were composed maybe 20 years ago or 30 years ago. So it's true that we have a lot of music that it's quite modern in the sense of historic modernity, modern in terms of being from the 18th or 19th century. But we have a set of melodies that they are actually quite old and are probably the core, the heart of the whole High Holidays music. Jewish Ashkenazic tradition has called these melodies Misinai, from the Sinai. You know, there's a tradition in Jewish, in rabbinic tradition, rabbinic literature, then when the rabbis want to explain why we do something, why they have this kind of mitzvah or this halakha, and sometimes they don't find the exact source in the Bible, for example, they use this kind of resource. They say, halakha le Moshe Sinai. This was given to Moses by, yes, I know, Kerry, I know. This was given to Moses in the Sinai. We don't know exactly where we start to have this source in a written form, but we know it was given to Moshe in the Sinai. In music, sometimes something happened quite similar in terms that there are melodies that for Ashkenazic tradition were considered so sacred, so special, so old, that in the Middle Age, they were called Misinai, from the Sinai. Of course, we know, based off, music research and musicology, that the structure and the melody, it's not from the Asian Middle East, but the whole idea of thinking we have this set of melodies that are so special for us, it's interesting. So now we will read a bit about these Misinai tunes, these melodies we consider very, very special. Where do they come from? What are those melodies? And when we will get into this, we will understand that even unlike another spiritual traditions, we don't have any kind of official music or sacred music in terms like, for example, Christianity may have. The music for us is a very important element of all the liturgy of the High Holidays experience. So we will start to read a bit of that. The idea of Misinai Nigunim, it's the Hebrew term for a traditional group of cantorial melodies in the Ashkenazic synagogue. This is the first idea. We don't find them in the Sephardic tradition, but it's interesting of both East and West European rite. That means we have them both in the Polish, Lithuanian, Ukrainian tradition, and also in the German, French tradition. That means they are universal, so to say, in the Ashkenazi community, and they are regarded as obligatory in terms that it would be unthinkable for a traditional Shaliach Tzivur to omit them or just to replace them. Unlike another melodies that you can replace or you can just bring a new one, but these melodies are basically the core of Jewish liturgy in High Holidays. Misinai, just like we mentioned, is an abbreviated form of halakha le Moshe Misinai, referring to an ordinance going back to Moses, who received it on Mount Sinai. The term was connected originally with biblical chant in the 12th century. The first time we use this Misinai concept in, we can say, liturgy, is about the idea that the Te'amim, the biblical chanting, has its origins in the Sinai. That's why in Jewish tradition, chanting the Bible in the public reading instead of reading it is almost mandatory. But in cantorial circles, these Missinai tunes are also called tunes of our Rabbi Maharil. Maharil was a very important medieval rabbi in Eastern Europe. And actually, another name, and maybe some of you have heard this word, is skarbowe or skarbowa, which is a Polish word that means official. In traditional Hazanut, the word skarbowa, it's related to this kind of melodies that you just can't, you can mess with them. You can't replace them. They are the official, the standard melodies. And according to the tradition was the Maharil, this very important medieval rabbi, the one that set these tunes. We have the distinctive features of these melodies. First, just like we say, they belong to the common patrimony of the Eastern and Western Ashkenazic rite. Let me give you a short spoil. Both German and Polish Jews, they all chant the Kol Nidrei in a very similar way. For example, you won't find significant difference between the way German or French or Polish or Lithuanian Jews will chant the Kol Nidrei. The other feature is that must invariably be found in the proper liturgical place. You can't use this melody somewhere else. You can use, for example, the melody of the Kol Nidrei in another text. You can, for example, you can use the melody of the Kol Nidrei, the Aleinu de Malchuyot, or sing the Kol Nidrei with the melody of Aleinu de Malchuyot. They are set to very specific texts. And the third feature is they have a very specific music structure. It's not just one short melody, what we usually call nusach. It's a whole set of melodies, very well structured, usually in a very fixed sequence that makes these prayers unique in terms that they don't follow the nusach, the music style of the section, but they have their own melodies. The usual concept of melody as an indivisible unit is not applicable to the Missinai Nigunim. They are real compositions built of several sections of individual character. An important feature, and this is something that I would say one of the things I've enjoyed most in these last weeks working with Rabbi Aaron, is their flexibility, his plasticity to just try new melodies, try new versions. And this is one of the things that is most characteristic of traditional Hazanut, the plasticity of themes and motifs, which allows for the easy adaptation to a wide range of text. Still more characteristic is the liberty granted to the performer. This is very typical of traditional Hazanut, and I don't want to spoil the text by Heschel, but I must say that one of the not so positive aspects of this era of cantorial institutes is the loss of spontaneity, the loss of creativity by cantors, because basically what probably a century ago was an exercise of improvisation and creativity became sadly reduced to just reading a score. And when you just read the score, well, you lose something in the middle. So that's one of the characteristics of that. For example, you know and you can hear what is a Kol Nidrei melody, but you won't hear never you will hear two exactly the same Kol Nidrei melody. Every cantor will add its own style, its own flavor. So that's the idea of flexibility. So we have strong evidence to assume that this whole set of melodies was developed in the Middle Ages. Why? Mostly because since we don't share these melodies with, for example, Sephardic or Oriental Jews, we can't assume they were introduced after the exile, after Ashkenazic and Sephardic or Mizrahi Jews departed from each other. But, and here's the interesting thing, since they are shared both by Eastern and Western Ashkenazic Jews, so we can think that they were developed in a time before we had Eastern and Western Jews. That means before a significant number of Jews from Germany migrated to Poland. And that was basically because of the Crusades. So we can track these melodies at least for the time of the Crusades. That makes these melodies at least 1,000 years old, which is, from a musical point of view, quite interesting and relevant. And actually, the solemn, or in some cases, dramatic style of these melodies, maybe we can think it's a product of their context of production, which was the Crusades. So all points to the hypothesis that these melodies that go all through our High Holidays liturgy were originated probably in Germany. That was the main center of Ashkenazic Jews before their expansion eastward, and in the medieval times. For example, some examples of Missinite tunes are, well, the most popular is our Mariv tune. That is interesting that it's interwoven with the Nusach in all our Mariv service, and it probably has quite an old origin, maybe even older than the Nusach itself. Maybe the melody came first, and they developed the Nusach, the recitation of the text, just to match the melody. Another very important Missinite tune is the melody from the Amelech. When we, in the traditional halacha, the traditional rite, the Chazan, the Shaliach Tzibur, starts after usually a member of the congregation started with Birchot HaShachar and Tzukei Zimra. So this very characteristic melody, Amelech, well, it's one of the oldest motifs. And actually, we will just talk about it later, but it has some resemblance with the melody from the Kol Nidre. They are like not quite far from each other. The other, another very popular Missinite tune is the melody for the Hazara, for the repetition of the Amidah in the first blessing, Avot, which is just like a mix, like a recollection of different motifs, some more joyful. In music, we call them major scales, some other more serious minor scales. And it's a very characteristic motif. And it's not the Nusach, because actually the Nusach, the typical melody for the repetition, the Hazara, is quite different from this. The melody from the Musaf Kaddish, It Kadah, Beit Kadah, Shemerabah. That's another quite old melody. And for the ones that has more experience in liturgy, you will remember it's a very similar melody to the Kaddish we sing in the Musaf when we are about to pray the Tfilot for Tal and Geshem, from the dew and the rain. They have very similar origins. Aleinu de Malchuyot, Aleinu leshavach. Some musicologists think this is one of the oldest melody of all Jewish tradition. And once again, it's a very characteristic melody. Of course, the Kol Nidre. This is maybe the most paradigmatic case of a Missinite tune. The Avodah, the section in Yom Kippur of the Avodah, has a very characteristic melody, just right for that section for some passages. And of course, the Neilatum, which is a very interesting, dramatic. For example, It Gadal ve'it Gadash meraba la da 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 la da 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 la da 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 and so on and so on. Another quite very musical, interesting and old melody. As you can see, this kind of melodies aren't the nusach, aren't the whole scales and melodies that go through all the services. They aren't songs, technically. You can just congregational sing them. Actually, if you pay attention, all of them are usually sung by the Hazan, by the cantor. They are solo, so to say, parts. We should remember that what we call nowadays congregational singing, it's quite a new phenomenon also in Ashkenazic tradition, and probably was first result of the innovation of Hasidism and the Nigunim, and also from when in the 30s, in the 1930s, the big financial economical crisis in the US forced many congregations to just disassemble professional choirs and require the congregation to start singing. So, for example, composers like Goldfarb starting to develop very easy singable melodies because now congregations couldn't afford big professional choirs. That's a very characteristic of Jewish tradition, how out of crisis, we make some kind of improvement. Okay, so just to wrap up this first section, we talk about these Misinai melodies, very ancient, medieval, very characteristic to whole the Ashkenazic tradition. And if you just go through them, you can see like a summary of all high holidays, the Ma'ariv, Amelech, Abot, Musaf, Aleinu, Kol Nidre, Avodah, Nila. They just like go all through the services. This is probably, once again, the term sacred wouldn't be quite accurate talking about Jewish music, but it is probably the closest to our sacred melodies, to like fixed mandatory melodies. Now, we'll move to the second part of our session, in which we will read some quotes from my point of view, one of the biggest Jewish thinkers of all 20th century, not only for the conservative movement, because Heschel came from a very long dynasty of Hasidic rabbis. You can see in his writings this Hasidic flavor, but also Heschel was very welcomed by liberal reform Jews, even by non-Jews, because he expressed this kind of contemporary mysticism, so to say, that was very, very innovative in his time. Heschel was very aware, very worried about the challenges of American Judaism. He wrote mainly for American Jews. He wrote mainly for non-Orthodox American Jews. And I think he realized that the real problem for Judaism was going to start when Jews would start to feel really comfortable in America. So he realized that the fact that now there was a society that was accepting Jews, that was inviting Jews everywhere, he said, okay, now the real problem starts, because when you have nowhere to go but the synagogue, you will go to the synagogue. But when you have everywhere to go but the synagogue, the question is, will you keep going to synagogue? And he thought that a very central aspect of the continuity of synagogue and religious life was music and cantors. Heschel had quite a mystic view about music. We will read some of that, but mainly he will I will think of this. He will face, or he will just oppose to two very sadly current mistakes in Jewish cantorial profession. One is to become an entertainer, and the other is to become a technician. One risk is to just focus of entertaining, of being just making people feel happy or just having fun. And the other is just reduce your task to just repeating notes from a score. And Heschel will go against these two trends, not an entertainer, nor a technician. So he will go like from a middle point and just try to think how we can approach music and how can music help us to develop a deeper sense of prayer, a deeper sense of Judaism. Once again, this article called The Vocation of the Cantor is available online. You can just Google Heschel, Vocation of the Cantor, and you will find it. I will read some quotes. Within the synagogue, music is not an end in itself, but a means of religious experience. Its function is to help us to live through a moment of confrontation with the presence of God, to expose ourselves to Him in praise, in self-scrutiny, and in hope. This is a key element for Heschel. Music in synagogue is not an end, it's a means. We are not in a concert, we are in a religious experience, and we use music to connect with God. We shouldn't use God to connect with music. Song, and particularly liturgical song, is not only an act of expression, but also a way of bringing down the spirit from heaven to earth. This is so Hasidic, this is so Baal Shem Tov. The numerical, and maybe you didn't know that, the numerical value, the gematria of the letters which constitute the word shirah, or prayer, is equal to the numerical value of the word tefillah. Oh, here is a mistake in the article. Shirah is a song, not. He says the word shirah, that means song, has the same numeric value that the word tefillah, which is prayer. So here what he says is, Jewish religious music is not just a way to express yourself, because you can find that in a lot of other genres. I'm sure that a jazz musician, when improvising, is expressing himself. I personally love John Coltrane, and every time I hear Coltrane, I'm sure he was expressing himself, or Miles Davis, or a blues musician. But here, there's another point. It has a religious purpose. We are trying to bring down something heavenly. This is not just an expressive art. This is a religious art. The only language that seems to be compatible with the wonder and mystery of being is the language of music. Music is more than just expressiveness. It's rather reaching out toward a realm that lies beyond the reach of verbal propositions. Heschel was very interested in the idea of mystery, of those things we can't express with words. And he says, music reach out places, spiritual places that the text won't reach. This, once again, is very, very Hasidic. That's the whole idea of the nigun, the song without words of the Hasidic tradition. And now Heschel will get a bit, spicy about cantors. Cantorial music is, first of all, music in the service of the liturgical word. Its core is nusach, and its integrity depends upon the cultivation of nusach. In cantorial music, music should be in the service of the word. Music should fix the text and not vice versa. This is a very interesting approach because it sets the whole idea of cantorial music as starting from the text. It's unthinkable that a cantor will know what is the meaning of what he or she is singing. And Heschel goes on. What I mean by the disengagement of cantorial music from the liturgical world, it's not singing without words. He's saying, no, I'm not talking about nigunim, but singing in a way which contradicts the words. Singing in a way that contradicts the words. If you really want to make a fine cantorial art, you must be aware of what's the emotion you're expressing with that. Once again, I don't want to spoil some of the things you will listen in next High Holidays, but let me tell you that Rabbi Aaron and me, we have done, I think, a very nice work about trying to use melodies that they were originally composed for another prayer with the same message, with the same idea. It's called intertextuality in literature. And well, you will like what we have done in that aspect, because basically the idea is that if I will use a melody that you associate with a specific idea or concept, that can be helpful to understand what we are singing now. So this is a resource we have used, and I think you will enjoy the result. Religious music is an attempt to convey that which is within our reach, but beyond our grasp. The loss of that tension throws all control and music into the danger of becoming a distortion of the spirit. We must realize, so to say, that we are in the realm of mystery. We should keep in mind that we are trying to use words to express things that cannot be put in words, to approach a God that is beyond expression, beyond conceptualization. So that gives all the cantorial and the religious music it gives it a new idea about focusing of, I won't say keeping the mystery, but yes, try to understand that there's something about what can be said, what you just can't understand, that should be, so to say, in there. The decline of Hazanut will continue as long as we fail to realize that reverence and faith are as important as talent and technique, and that the music must not lose its relationship to the spirit of words. I like this quote a lot. Reverence and faith are as important as talent and technique. He is not saying that talent and technique don't matter. Not at all. He says you can think of a Hazan without reverence and faith, without this, it's a concept that Heschel uses a lot, or this kind of, he called about ira, which is not really fear, it's reverence. It's the feeling that you are in a very transcendent moment. So you can just let music to lose its relationship to words. Music and words in cantorial art, in Jewish liturgy, goes one with another. It is important for the cantor to study the score, but it's also important to study the words of the prayer book. The education of the cantor calls for intellectual and not only aesthetic achievements. This is one, just like I told you before, of the unwanted, I think, consequences of the academic training of cantors. Sometimes, and I would say we, because I run a cantorial institute, sometimes we end up focusing more on reading the score than actually understanding the text. And the text is the key. You can have very good Hazanut with the text without the score, but you can have Hazanut with the score without the text. So he asks for us as cantors to go back to the text, to read, understand, and try to understand new meanings. The cantor must constantly learn how to be involved in what he says, realizing that he must also teach others how to attach themselves to the words of the liturgy. He has a secret mission to convert, to lead people to a point where they can sense that arrogance is an abyss and sacrifice is eternity. He must be involved. He must feel, he must believe what he is singing. Else, and I add this by myself, as a congregant, you can tell where a cantor is praying and where a cantor is just singing. There's a whole world of difference. And this last quote, I like it the most. Words die of rooting. I repeat, words die of rooting. The cantor's task is to bring them to life. A cantor is a person who knows the secret of the resurrection of the words. The art of giving life to the words of our liturgy requires not only the personal involvement of the cantor, but also the power contained in the piety of the ages. I really like this last quote. The cantor, the music, is there to resurrect, to bring the word to life again. The cantor has a very challenging task, and in a way, quite different from what we could think, for example, of a regular singer or musician. Because if you're, I don't know, a pop or a rock, or even a classical musician, and you will go give a concert year after year, you can just change your repertoire. You just can pick new works. You can just pick new text. You have an opera house, and every year we will say that a new opera. Imagine, I don't know, Madison Square Garden or the La Scala de Milan, year after year, performing one single opera. You would say, you're crazy. Who will go to watch, to see, to listen the same opera time after time? Well, and that's our challenge, because of course you can always have these slight changes, but we can say that probably 99% of the text, the words we read year after year are the same. They don't change. So that's the challenge of Jewish liturgical music, of the cantor, how to bring to life, how to bring something new. In rabbinical tradition, called Hidush, something new out of these words that are the same. And I like to think that these words, if you can have a Magzor or a Sidur, and the difference between them, they were to be live words or dead words, lies in if there will be someone to read them or to sing them. If when a Magzor is closed, the words are dead because there's no one just to read them. So I think that that's the main challenge of a cantor, of music. Music, you can think of that kind of spell, so to say, that give words life. You remember this, I think it was Cinderella, this old Disney movie in which there came this kind of fairy or something that gives life to all the furniture, these chairs and the table. I think it was Cinderella, right?
Fantasia.
Well, Fantasia. Oh, Fantasia. Yes, with Mickey Mouse. Yes. So I think that in a way, what we do with music is try to bring these words to life. Imagine just going through all Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, just reading without singing. Just becomes, I know, the phone book. It's just like word and the word and the word. I was telling the same story. One of the rabbis that hated most Hazanim was Maimonides, Rambam. He hated them. He said that Hazanim started to create hymns and poetry, what we call piyutim, and ruined the prayer, and we should just stick to the blessings. And of course, he was a very rational man, probably an ultra-rational man. And he has some solid arguments for that. But no one ever just accepted his proposal to just reduce the liturgy to just the brachot, just the blessing, and that's it. There was a spiritual need to just introduce songs and music and something beyond just words. And proof of that is that when in the 18th century in Eastern Europe, the Hasidic movement started to sing without words, the nigunim, and also stop singing just chanting and actually singing rhythmical melodies. Some of them with the rhythmical structure, maybe from Russian dances or Polish dances, what we call today Hasidic music. And it was a whole revolution that actually transcended the Hasidic movement, because most of us probably use Hasidic melodies in our services, and we are not, or Chabad or Satmar, but we just love this music. And that's the proof that, just like Heschel said, music can reach places where the words can't. But once again, and maybe we can just take some minutes to talk or just discuss some things. I think that the real challenge, once again, is not going either to the path of, let's say, entertainment and just focusing of keeping the audience happy, so to say, because yes, there are happy moments in our liturgy, but there are also non-happy moments in our liturgy. They're solemn, sad, but on the other side, not really become technicians, not just become score readers, machines that just read note after note without any kind of technical mistake and imperfect pitch and stuff, because after all, we are not in a concert, we in the set of prayer. I just like this beautiful midrash. I think it's the Jerusalem Talmud that says that something like that. I don't remember by heart, but says that there are two paths of the Torah. One of them is a path of fire, and the other one is a path of ice. So the rabbis ask, okay, we have a problem. If we go through the path of fire, we will just get burned. If we go to the path of ice, we just get frozen. What do we do? And they say, there's a simple answer to that. You just go right through the middle path, some ice and some fire. So I think that idea of middle part, of balance, of just singing together in some part of the service, just the Hazan, the Cantor reciting some others, some festive melodies, and some more introspective melodies. This aspect of balance is the secret to make music enhance our whole spiritual experience in the synagogue. So once again, I met this text from Heschel some years ago, like, I don't know, 10 or 15 years ago, when I was just starting to be a cantor. And every time I read it, I just find new things. And I really wanted to share it with you because I think it's quite descriptive of our current situation in the cantorial field nowadays, and also has the recipe, the advice for a really liturgic revival, so to say, that it just, let's go back to the text, let's find new meanings, let's be creative but respectful of the text. Once again, I think it's a very appropriate way to just introduce ourselves to what will hopefully be, at least for me, a very relevant, a very transcendental high holiday. So maybe we'll just take some minutes to share thoughts, ideas, questions, and well, if you want. Okay, go ahead.
Jonathan, you brought Heschel into the discussion. and you basically are using him as a standard. Well, as you know, the major theme of God in Search of Man is radical amazement.
Exactly.
So now you set a floor that what the two of you got to bring to us is radical amazement next week. So,
well, yes.
I mean, it's a small thing, but Heschel would expect it of you, and now I expect it of you. It's too bad.
Well, I think that this idea of amazement, we try to, while keeping a traditional services with the traditional melodies, both Rabbi Aaron and me, we share this passion for traditional Jewish music, also to bring some new ideas that will be new, but at the other time you will find familiar. So yes, I think part of all this is just to this kind of balance between offering a traditional service, but at the same time offering something new. Yeah, so I share with you probably, and actually would say in this very multi-stimulus time in which we have everything we want, technology is amazing, we can do things we never expected to do as a humanity. The great challenge is to find this kind of amazement again, because
Radical
now
amazement.
nothing amazes us. We just, are used to all kind of wonders, and we complained about not having a fast enough Wi-Fi in our plane. You think, oh my God, I have an internet in the plane, and we just complain about that not be fast enough, so to say, or just the whole idea of being connected right now. It's a miracle. So really, it's a miracle. So I think that that's the challenge, and I'm confident that Jewish religion, Judaism in general, can play a very significant role in this task of our humanity to get this amazement for life again.
I also jump in for a second that Cantor Jonathan talked about balance. So we would certainly do our best to try and create those moments of radical amazement. But in classic rabbinic tradition, the challenge is always put back to the individual. So I would
Right.
challenge you to go through the process of radical acceptance.
What we've got to bring in the Heschel world is to the game is wonder.
There you go.
We got to bring wonder, because the radical amazement and wonder go together to find the mystical, without having that sense of wonder, of looking for things that are beyond your experience. You're not going to find that mystical thing that God in Search of Man was trying to teach us. That's what religion is. That's what the religious experience is. That, what you talked about, Rabbi, that one time a year that you really felt connected while you're praying, or the 3 times a year, but you got to do it every day to find those 3 times. It's that searching for that wonder. And Heschel understood it, and we took 600 pages to describe it. And I'm looking forward to it.
Cantor?
Yes.
I have a question. When you gave the list, I think you gave 10 examples of the type of nusach that's used. I think you started with Marav on Rosh Hashanah. Well, actually, Marav Rosh Hashanah all the way through Ne'ilah. So I'm just kind of curious, because you presented them kind of a chronology. Can you speak a little bit about, maybe if there's a reason why we start off with that certain nusach for Marav, and then why we, for Shachrit, and then like Ne'ilah, we're kind of rushing to, to get in before the gates close. I'm just kind of curious if you can speak a little bit if there's any logic behind that, so to speak. If I can use the word logic in music.
Yes, it's a very interesting question. I mean, what I find very interesting that we have clearly a more, let's say, dramatic nusach in the Shacharit. We also have quite introspective nusach for all the Slichot and Bidui section in Yom Kippur. And the Ma'ariv section is very optimistic. It's almost like an hymn. I think there's some intention there, probably the idea of just starting with a good spirit. I think I can remember where I read it from, but probably I think the idea is to just not really just take the whole dramatic, terrible aspect of Yamin Noraim, which is of course present, but also the festive part. We're celebrating, we were created. So I think that's probably more like that, and probably it's like an anthem. It's a very optimistic. No, no, die, 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 die. It's like it's like like an hymn. So I think it's the logic that about the Neila. I find it very interesting because this is my personal perspective. Neila is it's a unique service because you have this kind of mixed emotions about, okay, we are finally starting to go right through the end. We have endured our fasting. We have been praying all day. We are just literally minutes ahead of finishing our most sacred day. But in the other time, at the same time, you have this very interesting idea of the gates are closing. We don't know exactly if our prayers have been accepted. So I think probably this dramatic, so to say, melody is probably to just give it also a significance to Neila, because the other option would have been just praying Neila the exact same way we have prayed Minha. And I think probably the whole idea of setting a new melody has a functional aspect of just letting us know that Neila is not just the last part of Minha. It's different service, has its own Amidah, its own Hazara. So I think that's probably this kind of functional, let's say, approach to that. But whatever the explanation of the origin of that melody is, I'm sure and I'm confident that it brought something very interesting, very emotional to Neila. In my personal experience, when I just started to learn this Neila, Nusach, Neila motif, my whole Neila experience as a cantor became quite different, because you are just finished praying the fourth Amidah of the day. You know all the melodies and the text almost by heart, because you know this kind of mantra aspect of Yom Kippur, in which you have the same text all over and over, and then you just bring something new, something different. And actually, from a musical point of view, the melody of Neila is very mysterious. I don't know if there are musicians here, but you don't know if it's a major melody or a minor melody. If you start to sing the first step of the scale, of you are actually doing the lower seventh, or where are you? It's this kind of ambiguous melody. So maybe I'm thinking just that about just right now, but melody, this kind of ambiguous melody that for moments it's very optimistical and for moments it's very dramatic, is probably an expression of our souls there. We are happy we are finishing Yom Kippur, but we also at the same time don't know exactly how things went. So probably this kind of mixed emotion melody is a reflection of our souls there. But yes, I think it's like the perfect ending. The whole ending of Yom Kippur is perfect. It's just it's beautiful. All as a congregation repeating all these very important passages and the shofar. It's amazing. Whoever created or thought about this was a true genius, because it's like the perfect ending for Yom Kippur.
Moses Messina.
Thank you. That was a very nice
Exactly.
answer. I appreciate that. Thank you, Chazal.